Hello, everyone. This is the 209th episode of Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I welcome back Argentine journalist Mr. Nacho Dimari as we discuss the Argentina national team under César Luis Menotti, this time in the year 1980. Welcome back, Nacho.
Hello, how are you, Sahan? It's wonderful to be here once again.
Thank you. So let's go back in time. Last time we left off at the end of 1979, there was a European tour and the introduction of Maradona to the global stage, followed by the under 20 victory, again with Maradona at center stage. So that was the
Mhm.
year of Maradona is properly introduced to a global stage. So as we come to the year 1980, what was the state of the affairs with the Argentina national team with Cesar Luis Menotti, now in his probably, I would say, 6 year in charge?
Yes, because he started in
74.
74,
Yeah.
75. At that time, and as you mentioned, with the youth team being as champion in the World Cup in Japan, most of the journalists were thinking which players from that team that won the World Cup in Youth World Cup in Japan would make it to the first national team. And there were a lot of friendly matches and tours that were prepared just to try to find which players were going to be in the first national team and which others maybe were going to leave that team. Even players that 2 years ago became world champions for the first time. So we are going to see this in 1980, 1981, and it's going to be very important.
And as we mentioned earlier, the year 1979 was all about Diego Maradona. So, what was his status at this point, now that he's 19, 20 years old almost?
Well, he is one of the most important players in Argentine First Division. At this point, he's still in Argentina Juniors, but there is mention that he will go perhaps to River Plate or perhaps to Boca Juniors, where he's going to finish. And he's perhaps the most important player in Argentina at that time. I think that for Maradona, 1980 was a very important year because he has to try to do the same that he had done in the World Cup, in the Youth World Cup. He has to take it to the first national team. So that was the most important thing to do to him. And with the aid, that's no doubt about it, of Cesar Luis Menotti.
As defending champions, there were no World Cup qualifiers for Argentina. So once
Mhm.
again, Menotti decided to go on a tour of Europe to test the squad. Can you once again discuss the importance of this policy?
Well, it was very important because in those days there were not so international matches as nowadays. So the possibility of play with, for example, for Argentina to play with European teams of the first and second level was very important to see how they were at that precisely moment. I repeat, nowadays we have, I don't know, help me, 20 matches in one season, more or less, for a national team. And at that time, there were 15 at least
15 in a World Cup here.
in
Most
a World Cup.
likely it was less
That,
than half of that, maybe. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that was very important because these kind of tours were very important for Menotti because he can see how the team was evolving and play with European teams that were the most important and difficult at that time. Because here in South America, it was the South American Cup, and you played against Brazil and Uruguay. That were the two teams, and Uruguay was not like nowadays. So in South America, the most important match that Argentina would have would be against Brazil. So it was very important if you could play European countries just to gain experience to the players, and once again to the youth players that were going to play in this year.
And for this tour, Menotti decided not to select any foreign-based players. And this meant that Mario Kempes, who was at Valencia, Osvaldo Ardiles, who was at Tottenham, and Daniel Bertoni, who was at Sevilla and was about to join Fiorentina, did not play in this tour. So ahead of going to Europe from April, Menotti selected a group to train 3 days at a military camp at Via Martelli. Let's also remind ourselves about the backbone of Menotti's team in this year 1980 that still included many of the 1978 champions, such as Passarella,
Filiol,
exactly,
Gallego, Tarantini,
Galvan, yeah.
Galvan, those players from Argentina who play at that time, they play in Argentina. Tarantini, Passarella, Galvan, Filiol, Holguín also, who was in Independiente. He used to play right defender in the national team and center defender in Independiente. I think that in that tour, he called up Villaverde, who was also a central defender in Independiente. Luque was still, at that time, was still part of the national team. I think that it was his last tour with the national team.
The options up front were more of a concern for Menotti, as Rene Hausmann had retired from the national team and Oscar Ortiz was injured and out of reckoning. Ahead of heading to Europe, Argentina plays a friendly match against an Ireland League 11 at Buenos Aires at El Monumental. For this match, we have the following lineup: Ubaldo Filol of River Plate, Jorge Holguín of Independiente, who captained this match as Passarella was absent, Hugo Villaverde of Independiente. This would be his sixth and final cap for Argentina. His first cap had been in 1979. He'd be replaced by international debutant Juan Simon of Newell's Old Boys, who replaced him in the 4th minute after an injury.
Simon, if my memory is not bad, was from the youth team.
Yes, some may recognize him for playing at Monaco in the 1980s, and he was also
That's
part
right.
of the 1990 World Cup team.
Yes.
Then you have Victorio Ocaño of Talleres, Americo Gallego of Newell's Old Boys, Jose Vantuin of Talleres, Juan Barbas of Racing Club. He'd be replaced by international debutant Carlos Fren of Independiente in the 63rd minute, Diego Maradona, Argentinos Juniors, international debutant and under-20 World Cup winner Gabriel Calderon of Talleres
right.
Cordoba, who
Right
would,
winger.
who would be part of the 1982 and 1990 World Cup squads. He was replaced by another international debutant, Santiago Santamaria of Newell's Old Boys.
You know, his nickname was Cucurucho. That's where you put the ice cream.
Oh, you mean the bread?
Yes, that's right. It's Cucurucho here in Argentina, and he was Cucurucho Santamaria.
Okay. What's the significance of that nickname?
I think perhaps for his nose, but I don't know exactly if Santamaria was Cucurucho for that. But it was Cucurucho Santamaria for us.
So he replaced Calderon in the 46th minute. You have Ramon Diaz of River Plate, Jose Valencia of Talleres. So you have 4 international debutants in this match. This match, Argentina wins 1-0. Maradona scores in the 12th minute. In some nations, this would not even be considered an official match because this was an Ireland League 11, but I believe Argentina considered it a full international. We have to mention that obviously Villaverde was injured and would miss the rest of the tour.
He was a very good player, Villaverde, but he has a lot of injuries during his career.
Now we come to the 1980 European Tour. Now, in 1979, Maradona may have been an unknown quantity to the global audience, at least at first. But by now, obviously, he's a household name. So, was the presence of Maradona even more important this time around for the global audience?
I think that at that time it was the growing moment of Maradona. And precisely this European tour will finish to show Maradona to the rest of the world and perhaps people that didn't watch the youth tournament in Japan. So I think that it was his first important tour with the first national team.
Already being a celebrity of sorts.
And he was merging with all the players that were world champion 2 years ago. So it was very important to put him over there in that team.
So the tour starts against England at Wembley on May 13th. And of course, there was still some history. There was the whole backdrop of the ill-tempered 1966 match with Ratin and Alf Ramsey's remarks and all that. So that was part of the background to this match. This match was also billed as like a duel between Maradona and Kevin Keegan. And the sight of them exchanging shirts at the end of the match is one of the other indelible images of this match. We mentioned that Villaverde was injured, so Menotti had to make some adjustments in defense where Olgin was moved from right back into the center of defense to partner Passarella.
That was his position in Independiente.
Right.
He used to play as central defender in Independiente.
And Van Tooyen would play as a right back. And for England, we already mentioned Kevin Keegan, but we also have the likes of Ray Wilkins, Ray Clemens in goal, Phil Neal, a lot of familiar faces.
Keegan was already in
Hamburg. Yeah.
Yes.
For Argentina, we have the following lineup. So this match is on May 13th at Wembley. For Argentina, we have Fiol, Olgin, Passarella of River Plate, captain of the team, Alberto Tarantini of River Plate, Van Tooyen of Talleres de Cordoba, Barbas. He'd be replaced by international debutant Carlos Ischia of Vélez Sarsfield in the 53rd minute. Gallego, Maradona, Santa Maria. He'd be replaced by Ramon Diaz in the 61st minute. Leopoldo Luque of River Plate and Jose Valencia. England would take the lead from a header by David Johnson in the 42nd minute. Then Johnson would double the lead early in the second half when Kennedy crossed from the left side, and that was touched by Fio, but he could not hold on to the ball, and Johnson slid and scored at the far post. Argentina would pull a goal back 5 minutes later when Maradona was fouled by Kenny Sansom in the box and Passarella scored from the penalty kick. But in the 69th minute, England scored the third goal through Kevin Keegan. And England won this match 3-1. But as matches between England and Argentina go, this was rather peaceful, we should say.
Yes. I think that in that match, there's a magnificent play by Maradona, but he couldn't score. I'm trying to recall the good memories, but I think that there's a very good play from Maradona. He didn't score, and he told the journalist years later, much years later, he told that he spoke with one of his brothers, and his brother told him what he should do at that moment that he didn't do. And he said, that's Maradona. It's not me who's saying this. He said that he remembered that conversation with his brother the day that he scored the magnificent goal against England in Mexico.
That would be the next time the nations would meet because of the conflicts 2 years later. There are some other stories regarding this match. While in London, Ubaldo Filo, he tried to buy Ray Clemens's gloves, but he could not fit one for adult fitting. It was also reported that Pata Villanueva, Alberto Tarantini's wife. She'd been fined for being caught shoplifting at Harrods.
This is gossip. This is nothing with football. This is
Yeah.
soccer nostalgia, not gossip nostalgia. When you were speaking, I remember that Pata Villanueva was one of the most important models in Argentina at that time. It was not like nowadays that young players date models. It was very bizarre if a football player used to meet or live with a model. And Pata Villanueva was one of the most beautiful and important models in Argentina. And that's right. She was found when she was, I don't know, putting some things in her bag that she didn't. She said that she forgot to pay. So let's believe in what Pata Villanueva said. You know Pata, no? Pata is the female duck.
3 days later, they met Republic of Ireland at Dublin. For this match, we have the following lineup: Fiol, Olgin, Juan Simon, Passarella, captain of the team, Tarantini, Barbas, Gallego, Maradona, Santa Maria, Diaz. He replaced by Gabriel Calderon in the 73rd minute, who at this point had joined Racing Club, I believe.
Yes.
And Jose Valencia. This match, Argentina would win 1-0. So in the 28th minute, a free kick was awarded to Argentina on the left side near the box after a foul on Maradona.
What it's important to mention is that midfield, Barbas, who was at that moment a little Ardiles or a young Ardiles, because he used to play in the same position, he was usually a very important player for Menotti. And he would think that he was one of the most important from the youth team in Japan, Juan Barbas. And he played also in Racing Club.
And later he would join Real Zaragoza and even Lecce in Italy. Yeah.
He played in Italy.
So getting back to that free kick, so Maradona himself takes the free kick from the left and Jose Valencia heads it in. Argentina win 1-0. A few days later, on May 21st, the squad heads out to Vienna to meet Austria. Now, this is a good Austrian side that qualified for the 1978 World Cup, would qualify for the 1982 World Cup. We have some familiar names:
Great players.
Walter Schachner, Krankel, who's playing at Barcelona,
Petzay, Bruno
Petzay, Prohaska, the goalkeeper Friedrich Concilia. And this match was also billed as the farewell match for Robert Sara, their longtime captain. In fact, he would leave in the 16th minute. By then, Argentina were 3-0 ahead. This match at Vienna on May 21st, we have the following lineup: Fiol, Van Tuyne back in the squad, Passarella, captain of the team, Olgin, Tarantini. He'd be replaced by Ocanio in the 29th minute. This was Ocanio's sixth and final cap. His first cap had been in 1975. Gallego, Barbas, Maradona, Santa Maria. He'd be replaced by Ramon Diaz, 70th minute. Luque, Valencia. He'd be replaced by Carlos Ischia in the 70th minute. And for Carlos Ischia, this was his second and final cap for Argentina. You already mentioned Bruno Petzay. He was absent in this match, and some people think that's why Austria lost so badly in this match. He was actually preparing with his club Eintracht Frankfurt in the UEFA Cup final that they were about to win. This match, Argentina takes the lead as quickly as the second minute when Maradona sent Santa Maria through and he rounded Concilia to score. In the 10th minute, Luque received the pass at the edge of the box and he lobbed it over the advancing Friedrich Concilia. In the 15th minute, Maradona does a combination play with Valencia on the left, and again he goes and dribbles past Concilia and score. So effectively the match was over after 15 minutes. To their credit, Austria pull a goal back. Actually, the most beautiful goal of the game when there's a throw in on the left side, and Kurt Yara, he scored with a volley from a narrow angle. But then Maradona scores two more goals. In the 75th minute, from the middle, Ramon Diaz sent Maradona through to score. And in the 88th minute, just before the end, Ischia, in his last match, he crossed from the left side and then Maradona struck in. 5-1 for Argentina. Very surprising result because, like I said, Austria were a decent side. And
Yes, they made a very good World Cup 2 years in
right,
1978. It was a very, very important team at that time in the
right.
European level.
There's a sequence in this match I still remember that if it happened today, the player would have been immediately sent off without hesitation. I remember there's like an Austrian who was through to score, and then Luque just grabs him. I don't know if you remember that sequence. He
Like a
just
rugby
grabs
player.
and he's just smiling, laughing as if
Because Luque was a striker, so as every striker, he didn't know how to defend. So that was why. I don't remember precisely, but I do remember that Luque was one of the most important strikers at that time. I think that if a player like Luque nowadays, it will be a player that will be playing in one of the 5 or 4 most important teams in Europe, without doubt. He was a terrific attacker and center forward, and he scores a lot of goals in River, in Unión de Santa Fe, before joining River, and everywhere he was a very good player.
So the tour ended in a positive fashion. What was the general takeaway from the tour and the team's progress?
It was a very good tour, even though the first match was a defeat against England, but the final match was a very good one with 5 goals against Austria, as you said, one of the most important teams at that time. And for me, the most important thing was that some players from the youth team were starting to merge and being part of the first national team. Juan Barbas, Maradona, of course, Ramon Diaz also, who is going to finish as the striker in the next World Cup in Spain, Calderon also. So 4 or 5 players were from the youth team were starting to be in part of the first national team, and that was the most important. That I think that was Menotti was looking for. Integrate
Yeah.
players with the ones who were world champions.
Menotti declared that he was satisfied with the tour. However, I think the press questioned the defense. They felt it was exposed against England.
The press also criticized Messi in his first years in the national team. So we
Yeah.
can expect everything from the press.
And apparently, Fiol and Luque had a difficult relationship with the press at this point, and many felt that this may have affected their performances. Barbas was criticized in comparison with Ardiles, although I think Menotti said he would maintain his
Yes.
confidence in him.
Mhm.
The likes of Ischia and Ocanio, they missed their opportunity and would be discarded. And even once Simon would be discarded, he would have to wait about a decade until Bilardo recalled him
That's
for the
right.
national team.
He was a defender with a lot of quality playing. He was a very good defender. I think that Menotti would think that he will fit in that team, but apparently he was young, and as you said, he had to wait to have another chance in the national team.
We come to the second half of the year where again this time Argentina plays friendlies at home. And we have to remind ourselves that at the beginning of the next year, at January 81, there is the Mundialito in Uruguay. So
Yes.
these are friendlies ahead of that. On September 18th at Mendoza, Argentina hosts Chile. For this match, we have the following lineup: Fiol, Olguin, Pasarela, captain of the team, Luis Galvan of Talleres de Cordoba, his first match of the year, Tarantini, Luque. He'd be replaced by international debutant Carlos Tapia of River Plate in the 82nd
Wow.
minute,
Young, very young player, Tapia, at that time.
Gallego, Maradona, Santa Maria, Diaz, and Valencia. This match ended as a 2-2 tie. Valencia scored first goal in the 20th minute from a pass by Maradona. Argentina doubles the lead in the 41st minute through Ramon Diaz. Just before halftime, Chile pull a goal back when Osvaldo Vargas scores from a free kick. And Chile tied the match in the 63rd minute. Rojas' shot was parried by Fiol and Sandrino Castec. He scored with an overhead kick from the rebound. 2-2 against Chile. This match against Chile, incidentally, would be the only one against a South American nation in this entire calendar year. And I think it goes back to what you were saying that Menotti was intent on testing out Argentina against quality European sides in line for the World Cup in 1982.
That's right. That's right. As I said before, for Menotti, the most important thing was to play against European teams. Play with teams in South America, it was good if he played Brazil. The other teams, it was good because the youth players would have the chance to gain some experience. For example, you named Tapia. I didn't remember that Tapia was so young at that time. I think he may be 19 years old because he became a very good player, but years later. He was a very good youth appearance at that time in River Plate, but at that time River had some of the most important players at number 10, for example, Norberto Alonso, who was world champion in 78, and Tapia was the same kind of player, left middle field with a very good touch. He could play like a false number 9 also, and he was doing his first appearances in the first division in Argentina.
The next friendly was against Bulgaria on October 9th at Buenos Aires at El Monumental. For this match that I have not found any footage from, you have the following lineup: Fiol, Olgin, Pasarella, captain, Luis Galvan, Tarantini, Barbas, Gallego, Maradona, Santa Maria, Diaz, and Valencia. Argentina would win this match 2-0. Santa Maria scored in the 32nd minute and Ramon Diaz in the 80th minute.
You see that you mentioned in the most part of these matches through 1980, that middle field, Barbas, Gallego, Maradona. It was starting to be a very important middle field, and it was always the same. Without Ardiles, Barbas was the first choice for Menotti. Gallego was the number 5 or a center half, and he was with the experience of being a world champion in 78. And Maradona was starting to be Maradona.
A few days later, on October 12th, again at Buenos Aires at El Monumental, they hosted Poland, one of the better European nations.
Also, yes.
Some familiar faces: Zmuda, Smolarek, Stanislav Terlechi. For this match, we have the following lineup: Fiol, Olgin, Pasarella, captain of the team, Galvan, Tarantini, and that's a standard defense of Menotti. Barbas, Gallego, Maradona, Santa Maria. He'd be replaced by Luque in the 75th minute, Diaz, Valencia, and he'd be replaced by Patricio Hernandez of Estudiantes in the 71st minute.
A very good player also.
Yes. Who would later join Torino in Italy. For this match, Argentina takes the lead in the 15th minute Marek Dzyuba fouled Santa Maria in the box, and Passarella scored from a penalty kick. Poland would tie the match in the 51st minute. Smularek was fouled in the box, I believe by Galvan, although I'm not 100% certain. And Vladimir Chiolek scored from a penalty kick. In the 59th minute, Maradona would score from a free kick and give Argentina the victory. Maradona is becoming more and more influential in the team as this year is advancing.
No doubt about it. And next year, when we are going to speak about the Mundialito, at that point was perhaps the most important player in Argentina, surpassing the players that won 2 or 3 years ago the World Cup in Argentina. Again, that Polish team was a very good one because they made also a very good World Cup in 78
and would finish third in 82. Yeah.
With a lot of important players in that team.
In fact, would defeat Argentina the following year.
Yes, that's right.
Few days later, on October 15th, so if you look at it, within a space of a week, Argentina played 3 international matches as part of preparation to resemble, I guess, a World Cup situation. So on October 15th, they faced Czechoslovakia, again at Buenos Aires at El Monumental. Again, this is a Czechoslovakia side that would qualify for the 1982 World Cup. Some familiar faces like Antonin Panenka, Marian Mazny, Zdenek Nehoda.
Nehoda.
Yeah, managed yes. by Josef Venglos.
They made a very important European Cup. They became champions in 76.
Yeah, but even in 1980, they finished third.
Finished the third. Okay. Yeah.
For this match, we have Fiol, Olgin, Galvan, Passarella, captain of the team, Tarantini, Barbas, Gallego, Maradona, Santa Maria, Luque. He'd be replaced by Patricio Hernandez in the 76th minute, and Diaz. In the 17th minute, Diaz received a pass at the far post on the right side and just tapped it in. And Argentina won this match. So 3 matches in a week, 3 wins. I mentioned the Mundialito in Uruguay in January 1981. So 2 friendlies in December that are as part of a preparation for the Mundialito. How important was the Mundialito for Argentina?
Well, it was very important. I remember at the time that all the press were speaking about the Mundialito in Uruguay because it was a tournament that makes the reunion of all the world champions in history. Soft, I think that England didn't accept the invitation. At the place of England was the Holland team, Netherlands team took place. But it was very important because also at that time there were no important tournaments except the South American Cup and the European Cup. Now we have, I don't know how much tournaments in 1 year. Perhaps we have 3, 2, 5. And at that time, it was not very common to see all the teams that won the World Cup playing together. And it was very important. And it was very important also because it was a year and a half from the World Cup in Spain.
The friendlies in this month of December. On December 4th at Mar del Plata, Argentina hosts the Soviet Union. For Soviet Union, we have some familiar faces: Rinat Dasayev in goal, Alexander Chivadze, Fedor Cherenkov, and of course, the Armenian Horen Oganessian. So for this match, we have the following. So for this match, we have Filiol, Olgin, Passarella, Galvan, Tarantini, Barbas, Gallego, Maradona. Making his international debut, Jorge Checky of Boca Juniors. He'd be replaced by Carlos Fren of Independiente in the 73rd minute. This would be Carlos Fren's second and final cap for Argentina, both of them in this year, 1980. Then you have Diaz and Valencia. Argentina takes the lead in the 19th minute when a pass on the left side reached Maradona and he shot from a somewhat narrow angle to give Argentina the lead. But just 2 minutes later, on the left, Oganessian receives a pass and he shots past Fiol, and the match ends in a 1-1 tie. So, again, this is a Soviet side that would qualify for the 1982 World Cup, a decent side who just months earlier had actually defeated Brazil in Brazil. Almost a couple of weeks later, on December 16th at Cordoba, Argentina hosts Switzerland. For this match, we have the following lineup: Fiol, Olgin, Passarella, Galvan, Tarantini, Barbas, Gallego. He'd be replaced by Vantuin in the 67th minute, Maradona, Luque. He'd be replaced by Cecchi in the 61st minute. This was Cecchi's second and final cap, all of them within days of one another. Diaz, Valencia. He'd be replaced by international debutant Alejandro De Bolle of Ferrocarril Oeste in the 73rd minute. And for De Bolle, this was his one and only cap for Argentina. As far as the match itself, it was an easy win for Argentina. In the 5th minute, Maradona crossed with a Rabona cross from the right side, and that was headed in by Diaz. In the 9th minute, a back pass was picked up by Luque, who went around the goalkeeper and scored. In the 43rd minute, Luque sent Valencia through, who shot from a narrow angle just before the halftime in the 45th minute. Maradona received a pass on the right side. He cut in and curled the shot past the goalkeeper. And in the 67th minute, Andre Egli, he fouled Maradona in the box and Passarella scored from a penalty kick. And the year was over. Looking at this year, it seems like Calderon and to some extent Santa Maria were integrated. Let's remember Diaz was already integrated the previous
Yes.
year, and of course Barbas as well. So it seemed like Menotti was starting to maintain a backbone. Like the defense, it seemed to be the standard one, the
Yes.
midfield. Up front, there were some permutations. Do you think Menotti was starting to have his ideal lineup in mind for 1982?
I think so, yes, because with all the players that you mentioned in 1980 in all those matches, if you put the players that were at that time 4-inch players, Bertoni, Kempes, and Ardiles, you will have the national team that was going to be part of the Mundialito, and 2 years later, or 1 year from the Mundialito, to be part of the national team in the World Cup in Spain. I think that this year was very important to Barbas, was very important to Maradona, and was very important also to Ramon Diaz and Calderon, because those players will survive and will be part in the next World Cup. And as you mentioned, Sechi, Carlos Tapia, and Debole, that I didn't remember Debole. He was a young attacker from Ferrocarril Oeste. They were 18 years old at that time. And for them, it was very important to be part with Passarella, Gallego, Filiol, Tarantini, Galvan, players that they were fresh world champions. So that was very, very important. And I think that at this point, Menotti was noticing who's from those youth players that had a magnificent youth World Cup in Japan, which of those players he will be able to count for the next World Cup in Spain.
In a way, the European tour, especially the loss against England, it kind of showed how important the foreign-based players like Kempes, Ardiles, and Bertoni still
Sure.
were with 1982 in mind.
Sure. They were, let's put our mind back in time in 1980. Kempes was perhaps the most important player in the world. He was fresh striker of the World Cup in Argentina. He was playing in Valencia. Bertoni was moving from Sevilla to Fiorentina, as you said before. Ardiles was perhaps the most important player in the English Championship. And those players, if you put them in this team, they will make the ideal 11 for Menotti towards the World Cup in Spain.
Getting back to Maradona, a lot of younger fans would have no concept about the whole circus that was around Maradona in those years, 1980, 81, when he's being linked to Barcelona. This is the era where he's becoming bigger than a football star almost in terms of fame, media attention. At what point did this start, this phenomenon where, like I said, there's just this media circus around him everywhere he goes? And what were Menotti's thoughts on this?
Well, at that time, we could say that Maradona was starting to be in Maradona in all that sense, because he was a fresh young player who was world champion in the youth team. He was cut from the national team from 1978. So he was part of that previous in 77 and 78. He was part of the team that would become world champion in 78 in Argentina. And he was starting to be perhaps the most important and valuable player for Menotti and the Argentinian team. Besides this, he was still at Argentinos Juniors, but there were, as I said before, mentions that he could go to River Plate or Boca Juniors or even Barcelona, because he was becoming the Maradona that we will know years later.
In closing, what was the general takeaway from Argentina's performances for this calendar year 1980?
I think that for Menotti, as I said before, it was a very important year because he managed to get the most important players from the youth team and put them in the national team. And I think that he would know at this time that perhaps Luque was not going to be part of the World Cup. Santa Maria, he played a lot of matches in this tour, in this year, but he didn't, perhaps he was not, even I think that he was in the World Cup in Spain, he couldn't fit in the right position. But he had at that position also Calderon, who was a fresh youth player who was champion in Japan in the Youth World Cup. And I think that the fact that three of the most important players, as we mentioned before, Bertoni, Kempes, and Ardiles, didn't took part in all these 1980 matches, that would be very important for Menotti to see which other players he could use instead of these players that were top and that they were very important in the team that 2 years before became world champions. Bertoni, Kempes, and Ardiles was the brain, perhaps, of the team at that time of Argentina. So it was very, very good for Menotti to have the chance to use other players, young players, and see what they can do and what they can give to the national team.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this series, and we will pick up with the year 1981 in our
And the
next
Mundialito.
podcast. Yes. And all our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Nacho, thank you once again and
To
hope to
you.
continue these discussions on
As I
Argentine
said
football
before,
history.
it's a pleasure to be part of this gossip nostalgia podcast. No, it's very interesting, and it's lovely to remember all those players, all those matches, and it will be more important next time with the Mundialito.
Indeed. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you.